Hello! Today I'm going to be taking a look at this set of Caran Museum Aquarelle watercolor pencils. It's the 76 box, the largest set you can get of them. I've had this for quite a few years. Nick bought it for me for Christmas. I've been meaning to do this video for a very long time and I'm finally getting to it today. I'm really excited. Let's get into it! So the Museum Aquarelle pencils are the top of the range by Caran and they are their watercolor equivalent to the Luminance pencils, and I also have that set in 100. So that's what the Luminance pencils look like. They're round, they come in this beautiful box with lots of foam, and you may have also seen these ones which are Supracolor Softs. They're also Aquarelle pencils, watercolor pencils. They are one step down, I think, from the Museum Aquarelles. These are really beautiful though. I've done a video on that. You can check that out at the end of this one. I'll link it. But I really wanted to take a look at these Museum Aquarelles today and see how they go. It's been a little while since I've used them. They are very expensive and beautiful. The set comes with 76 pencils, and there are also 2 Technalo graphite pencils that are water-soluble graphite. So I'll open it up and we'll check it out. They look almost brand new because I haven't used them that much, although some of them, like this blue, are a little bit shorter than others. But they are essentially in the same packaging as the Luminance pencils, but they are a hexagonal barrel instead of a round barrel like the Luminance. There are 3 tiers of pencils. So they sit in these foam holders very, very well. They're nice and snug, but don't tip it upside down because they will fall out. I know this from experience. There's the first tier, then the second one, and the bottom one is inside the box itself, so that one doesn't come out. And over here are the 2 graphite pencils. I have used these a little bit more than the coloured pencils. In fact, I had these in a different place and I couldn't find them for ages. I have hunted through my studio to find the 2 pencils to put them back in the set, but they're nice pencils. I've got an HB and a 3B here. That's what comes in the set, and yes, they are water soluble, as are all of the pencils. So I'll just take a closer look at a pencil again. On it we'll have star ratings. This one is a 3-star, so it's not quite as light fast as some of them. Yes, this one's got a 5-star. I'm pretty sure Caran has got a really full chart of all of the star ratings for light fastness. If I flip around, it has the name of the colour on the pencil in white. Then it's also got the little paintbrush and Caran etc. So that's what they look like. It's quite a thick barrel on here. I'll just pull out a Supracolor so you can see the difference between the thickness of these pencils. The Supracolors are actually a bit thicker than I remember them being, but let me pull this one out. There's a comparison between the two. Probably see that the Museum Aquarelle is a bit thicker than the Supracolor, but the Supracolor's got the colour going the entire length of the pencil, which is what I really like. The Museum Aquarelles are only at the end, and this matches the Luminance pencils. I have my large sketchbook here. I've already ruled out my swatch chart. So let's get colouring all of these and paint them out, see what they look like. I'll colour them out dry first and then I'll paint everything at the end so we can see how the colours activate. I actually remembered to swatch the white pencil on black paper so it's easier to see. I'll leave that there and I'll stick it in the book later. As you can see, I've sped up all of my footage because it took me ages to swatch these out. I had made sure to put them all in order and keep them in order so that I wouldn't make a mistake and swatch the wrong colour in the wrong spot. But just using the pencils as they are with fairly blunt points, the colours went down nicely. It had been a while since I'd used these and I'd forgotten just how highly pigmented they are, and the colour saturation went down easily onto the paper. You'll see that saturation a lot more once I wet them with a paintbrush, but even dry they're pretty decent. And I like the feel of the pencils going onto the paper. I'll come back to that in a second, but this violet that's going down did not work very well, and I was wondering why it was so scratchy. I think I've got the answer to that. I remember wetting the paintbrush directly onto the pencil ages ago. It's a technique that I've seen used with watercolor pencils. Don't do it. What happens is that the water gets into the pencil lead and into the wood and dries everything out, so the pencil doesn't work later on. Fortunately, I think I'd only really done it to the violet, and all of the other pencils in the set are fine. I'm hoping once I sharpen the violet down a bit more that it will be fine again, but for the moment it's not very good.
But as I was saying before, when I was colouring out these pencils, they have a really nice feel on the paper, and they do feel quite a lot like non-water soluble pencils, which is great. So you could theoretically do drawings with these totally dry and never re-wet them with water, but when it comes to aquarelles, I just have to use water with them. It's like, why would I have them if I'm not going to wet them out? Oh, and here's another little problem. These two pencils are mislabeled, and they should be the other way round, because one of them is very obviously a dark sap green and the other a dark phthalo green, not the ones that they are labelled with. How annoying is that? I'm not sure if anyone else has mislabeled pencils, but I am convinced they are in the wrong order. So going through the different colours here, there are a lot of earthy tones in this set, which is very nice if you like to do landscapes and skin tones, I guess. All sorts of things really. And there are also bright colours at the top, so it's actually a pretty decent mix of colours. That anthraquinoid pink is also in the Luminance set, as are quite a lot of these other colours. And Caran like to have percentages when it comes to browns. So for example, there's a burnt sienna 50%, a dark flesh 50%, also sepia and 50%, and then there's a few 10% ones. Not as many as what is in the Luminance set, and not all of the colours match the Luminance ones. So for example, in Faber-Castell's range, all of the pencils I think are the same colours, but in the Caran range between the Museums and the Luminances, there are differences. And I also included the two water-soluble graphites here. And now for the best part, swatching them with water. So I started off with the white, and that's decently opaque. Then we get into these yellows, which are incredibly bright when the water goes down. They're so beautiful. It's like magic just watching them come alive with water. And this is the primary reason why I would not leave them dry. Because look how much more beautiful they become when they're wet. Though they do lose some of their vibrancy once they've fully dried. Most of the colours in this set will activate really well in water and everything will lift off. I did have a few which didn't work quite as well, and you can see just a slight line where it hasn't quite fully activated. And my violet, sadly, is a bit of a lost cause, although it's still actually activated a bit better than I was expecting, which is a relief. So the Caran Museum Aquarelle pencils are considered to be pretty light fast overall, and most of them are 4 and 5 stars, which are the highest light fast ratings. There are a few 3-star ratings in there. Not sure if there are any 2s. I'll see if I can find a chart and I'll link that in the description so you can check them out. Now light fastness is also affected by whether the pencils are dry or wet, so when you wet them out, they do tend to lose a bit of their light fastness. And the lighter the wash, the quicker it will fade. I think there are a few people who have actually tested these out and found that some of them do fade in the sunlight pretty quickly. I have not done these tests for myself, so I really can't say for sure exactly how light fast these pencils are. Do your research, it's always worth checking out other people's opinions as well. Personally, I would just avoid hanging anything in the sun regardless of how light fast it is. Regular ambient daylight usually isn't that much of a problem anyway. Can you see what I mean about the dark sap green and dark phthalo greens? I'm convinced by swapping the pencils that I actually have them in the right order now. Overall, I really like the colour palette of the Caran Museum Aquarelles. It is a bit light in the purple area, and there aren't a lot of pinks, and that's because pink is notorious for being very fugitive in colour, and you'll find a lot more pinks in the Supracolour range if that's what you're after. They have some really pretty ones in there. I think russet is one of my absolute favourite colours that comes in the Museum Aquarelle and the Luminance set. It's such a beautiful reddish browny colour, it's so lovely. And I think in particular the blues, greens and browns range are covered very well in this set. There are also a few greys and a couple of blacks, and I think overall it's a pretty well balanced set. Just finishing up with these last dark colours. The blacks are really dark, which is great. And these two graphite pencils reactivate in water nicely too.
Here we go, all of them swatched out in relatively decent order. There's a couple which are maybe not quite in the right place. I'll just lift them up so you can see them a bit more closely. There are some wonderful juicy colours in there. You could see the violet has had a few little issues. It's a little scratchy, and that's because it's drier than the others, and like I said, that is entirely my fault, I think. Some of them you can see it hasn't quite picked up all of the pigment from the paper, and that's usually the way with most coloured pencils that I've ever tried, but otherwise they do lift very well. They just naturally settle into the paper, so when you draw anything on paper with a pencil, it will leave a little bit of residue. I have never found anything that has not ever done that, but if you don't want that residue, I would just say use straight watercolours, don't worry about the watercolour pencils, but otherwise they are lovely and bright. That russet's really standing out to me, as is the purplish red, the night blue. Oh, there's so many colours in here. I don't even know what I'm going to do for my artworks. I might do more than one. I'll just see how I'm going.
I compromised and I'm going for a collage of pictures on the one page using the Technalo pencil just to draw everything out. So I wanted to try and showcase a lot of the colours, and I've gone with a few different birds so that I can try out different colour palettes. I've got a barn owl up in this corner, a pigeon down underneath it, and then over here is a pheasant, which I've never drawn before, and it ended up looking a little funny. And up in this corner I've got a cheeky parrot, and then I ended up with another picture in the middle which I'd rubbed out the first time because I didn't like the placement. I think this is a bluebird. It ended up looking like a fat penguin for quite a long time before I was able to get the proportions right, and that's sitting on a branch. So I took off most of the graphite rather than wetting it, and now I'm going in with the Museum Aquarelle pencils, which I made sure to sharpen properly before I used them because they just work so much better when you have a nice fine point. These sharpen very well, by the way, they don't break easily, so that's always a win. I drew down a fairly light layer of pencil, adding in a bit of shading here and there, because I am going to wet everything out and then do another layer a bit later. Going in with that first layer of water now, and you could just see how well the pencils activate. I'm so happy with how these turned out on this particular paper. This is Hahnemuhle 100% cotton cold press paper in the sketchbook. I'm finding that this paper actually works better with coloured pencils than it does watercolours because it doesn't like to hold very much water, but a little bit of water works nicely. So moving on with this pigeon, now I'm trying out some of the blues and purples in the set. I know a lot of people think pigeons are rats with wings, but I really like them. I always have. I just think they're really interesting birds, and they're very pretty as well when you look at them closely. The blues in the set are just gorgeous. And of course, in this bit I did not notice that the camera had gone out of focus, so there is a bit of blurry footage here. It will disappear in a moment, but I'm just colouring out that bluebird, and here we go with some in-focus footage. Yay! Even with the lightest layer of pencils, the colours, especially that phthalo blue, have just exploded. So as with highly pigmented watercolours, you really don't need a lot of pencil to get a very bright result. And that's a good thing because the Museum Aquarelle pencils are very expensive, and I think are some of the most expensive pencils out there. But at least with my set, I would consider them to be worth the money. Mine are a few years old now, so I don't know what the brand new pencils are like. Let me know if you have some new ones and are they just as good. This pheasant didn't work out quite as well as I wanted it to. I think its body looks quite a lot like a beehive, especially when I added in the black stripes, but these yellows and orange colours are incredibly vibrant, so there's no issues with those. I did let everything dry before I went in with this black layer of pencil. I've found that it's usually best to get your yellows down first, or light colours, and then go in with the dark colours so that the yellow ones don't get smudged. Now, I let this paper dry completely before I went over the top with dry pencils again for subsequent layers, and that's because if you put the dry pencil onto damp paper, it will create really harsh lines that are then almost impossible to activate again with water, so just be wary of that. Let the paper dry fully and then the pencils will go over the top nicely and you can layer to your heart's content. I think I did 2, sometimes 3 layers on these, and I'm not going in the same order this time around because I was using the pencils that I had out, and for the barn owl I'd put all of those pencils away, so I did that one last. Just trying to not have to pull pencils in and out of the box all of the time. I find it easier to take out the colours that I like and put them on the table, or or in a small tray just so that it's easier to see the colours that I want to use. I thoroughly enjoyed using these pencils. I had no problems at all with any of them. Even the violet, once I'd sharpened it a bit, was behaving a bit better, although I think I'm going to have to sharpen quite a lot of it before I get to the better lead. But the pencils work well when they're dry and even better when they're wet. The colours are beautifully vibrant and saturated, and they really come into their own once you start adding more than one layer. The first layer usually looks pretty patchy once everything has fully dried, but then going over the top with further layers will just take all of that away, and the more layers you add, the better it looks. I could have added more to these, but I was a bit lazy, so I decided that there were too many gaps in this, and I thought I would add in some little butterflies. I'm copying pictures from a sticker book of butterflies. I have absolutely no idea what kind of butterflies they are, but I went for ones that kind of match the colour palette of the birds, and so this one looks similar to the barn owl, and then I've got a different one over here which I think is green and black. So I don't even know if the barn owl colours are exactly right, especially on the wing, because the reference photo was cut off and I just had to kind of make up some of the picture, so apologies if my colours aren't exactly as the bird is meant to look, but never mind, it doesn't really matter, does it? I tell myself it doesn't. I went for one more little butterfly in this corner, going for some orangey colours. I think I'm actually using that lovely russet. And then I added a chrysalis to the branch because it just felt like it needed something in that little gap. And I'm really happy I did a collage of pictures. I'm going to have to do this again in the future because it looks really awesome. I'm so happy with how this has turned out.
And here's my finished page spread. I am so happy with how this has turned out. The colours are really vibrant and I'm just enjoying the aesthetic beauty of adding those butterflies in to fill in some of the gaps. I could have kept going and filled in some of these gaps, but I thought it might just be too much, and I can always go back to it later if I decide I want to add more, but I'm just really happy with how it looks at the moment. So, would I recommend the Caran Museum Aquarelle pencils? Yes, I would, most definitely. If you're looking to invest in a more expensive high quality set, this is definitely one to consider, and the box itself is just beautiful. I don't know if they'll ever add more colours and make it up to 100 like they did with the Luminance, but I'm here for it if they do. Although, hopefully not anytime soon because I just know it will be super expensive to buy more of them. But I've enjoyed this set a lot this time around. There's still heaps in there, and they work so much better when you sharpen them to a nice fine point like that. Are they better than the Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürers? It's really hard to say. I think they're on about the same kind of level as them. They are slightly different, and really I'm going to have to do a showdown between the two to fully compare them. But if you've got the Albrecht Dürers, those are amazing pencils as well. Either set, the Museums or the Albrechts, are perfectly good to use, and it doesn't matter if you have one or the other, I don't think. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope this video was helpful. The Caran Museum Aquarelles is something I've been wanting to film for a long time, and I hope I did them justice. Let me know in the comments what you think of them. Do you think they're worth the money? Now, I have done a full review on the Albrecht Dürer set, so you can check that out here, and I've probably got another video up here to look at as well. And I'll see you all again really soon in my next video. Have a great day out there, and I'll swatch you later. Bye!